The other big issue, of course, is and that's Peters in Melbourne, I alluded to this, because last weekend the magnificent Spring Racing Carnival opened with a bang. 40,000 people at Randwick for a phenomenal race meeting highlighting the third richest horse race on earth, the Everest, bear with me. In Melbourne, the historic Caulfield Cup, won by a Japanese visitor. And they're likely to reproduce, I'm about to give you a tip here, reproduce the dose this Saturday in the Cox Plate, the greatest weight for age race in the world, the horse Elise Gracieux, the graceful Lily. There you are. Now, carnivals of this kind are not just about racing. To put it simply, at Randwick and Caulfield, if people eat egg and lettuce sandwiches, it's a big day for the little fella who grows the lettuce and supplies the eggs. A big day for the baker and all the people who work for him, and the pie seller and the soft drink manufacturer, the beer supplier. And if you're eating in the marquees or any of the major hospitality areas, there are tablecloths and napkins, all have to be laundered. And not to our credit, but we do leave a mess behind. So it's one of the big days of the year for those companies and their staff who clean up. Hundreds of millions of dollars are poured into the economy. Hotels, restaurants, clothing shops, milliners. Peter loves the milliners. Someone is benefiting big time from the big spend. And then, of course, revenue to government from gambling. And then there is the ABC. On the eve of all this, a report titled as an expose, the dark side of the racing industry attacking the industry. But typically ABC, the programme's focus was on an abattoir with no connection to the racing industry and over which the racing industry has no jurisdiction. The ABC relied exclusively on video footage supplied by an organisation that is dedicated to banning horse racing. And the organisation has a long history of making wild and unsubstantiated claims. I understand it took 2 years to bring forward the television pictures. My information is that only 50% of the horses in the so-called secret abattoir footage were thoroughbreds. The rest were non-racing horses. And only 10 so-called kill days were secretly filmed when the horses were destroyed. They seem to have used those 10 days as a sample size to determine the annual average of horses destroyed. And that's how they came up with the number 4,000. It's just a wild guess. But the failure to take immediate steps to prevent the cruel and abhorrent treatment of animals by the Merrimist Queensland abattoir calls into question the bona fides of those who took the footage. Why wasn't it reported immediately to the police or the DPI in Queensland if their real aim was to prevent cruelty to animals? The time it's taken to bring the footage forward questions the authenticity of the video because it now cannot be investigated. Was proper due diligence done on the authenticity of the footage? If not, why not? How was the audio captured? There were allegations that whistleblowers were paid to fabricate or contrive cruelty in the footage relating years ago to the live export of sheep. In this instance, the footage shown was heavily edited. Only ex-racehorses were highlighted, whereas racehorses make up fewer than 10% of the horse population. Did the ABC have footage of the treatment of the other 90%? And if so, why didn't it show that footage? The fact that large parts of the footage were up to 2 years old severely compromises the ability to verify the authenticity of the footage and also the ability of the Queensland authorities to investigate and prosecute the perpetrators. Prompt reporting to the appropriate authorities would have been critical to stomping out such abhorrent behaviour. The 7:30 report itself seems to have been premeditated and sensationalised. Was it fair? My understanding is Racing New South Wales Chief Executive Peter V'landys was not shown the footage before or during his interview, thereby depriving him of the opportunity to respond or express his views on the shocking and appalling treatment of the horses. One can only assume the ABC wanted a gotcha moment by not showing V'landys any of the footage or even informing him that it had such footage. A fair and balanced report would have provided that opportunity and also stated that the footage at the Queensland abattoir did not show any horses from New South Wales. Instead, 7:30's report was focused on dramatising and sensationalising the issue prior to the Spring Racing Carnival. The ABC clearly had no interest in presenting a fair and balanced report or providing the racing industry with the proper opportunity to respond. The ABC provided details to Racing New South Wales of 14 horses that it claimed were New South Wales domiciled horses that had been sent to the knackery. Those details were only provided after the V'landys interview. My understanding is that Racing New South Wales' investigation in respect to those horses is that the horses listed had been retired and rehomed. No person licensed by Racing New South Wales sold or gave one of those horses to a knackery. I understand that Racing New South Wales has also established in the short time available that one of those horses, Reliable Kingdom, that the ABC maintained was condemned to death, is today alive and well. There may be others that are alive and well, but typically the ABC wasn't interested in the facts, as they were contrary to the sensational and dramatic effect of the program. I understand the ABC failed to return Racing New South Wales calls or communications after promising to do so. It can only be assumed, therefore, that having the correct facts would have ruined their agenda to show the racing industry in the worst possible light. So the ABC chose to ignore the facts. The report was also presented in such a manner as to infer that horses were being sent to the abattoir immediately after being retired from racing. The subsequent evidence shows that the racehorses identified had retired from racing some years previously and had had a number of non-racing owners during the period between their retirement from racing and being sent to the abattoir. It should also be noted that there are only 2 abattoirs in Australia where horses can be processed to be exported for human consumption. Those 2 abattoirs are not in New South Wales or Victoria, and it is illegal in New South Wales for a horse to be processed for human consumption. But it is the ABC. The presenter on the program will presumably get off scot-free. As with the live sheep export story, they hope for an industry irreparably damaged. Thankfully, Australians, whether they are racegoers or not, whether they know the difference between the Melbourne Cup and the Davis Cup, Australians are smart enough to see beyond the often twisted agendas of a left-wing ABC, which we fund. Your ABC? I think not.